The docking bay of Nexus Station thrummed with controlled chaos as Captain Marcus Thorne adjusted the worn leather flight jacket that had belonged to his father. The familiar weight of the garment brought comfort amid the diplomatic tensions, crackling through the air like static electricity. His fingers unconsciously traced the intricate medallion sewn over his heart. Spiraling pattern of silver and blue that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Another milk run escort mission, he muttered to himself, watching the technicians prepare for the arrival of the Zephyrian delegation. 3 months of deep space patrol had left him craving something more substantial than diplomatic babysitting. But orders were orders. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Vall approached with her usual brisk efficiency, datapad in hand. Intelligence suggests their lead diplomat is someone important, Serafina Velta, apparently. A warrior scholar with significant political influence. Marcus nodded absently, his attention drawn to the massive viewport showing the approaching Zephyrian vessel. The ship moved with organic grace, its biometallic hull rippling like liquid starlight. He'd heard stories about Zephyrian biotechnology, but seeing it firsthand never failed to inspire awe. The atmospheric processors shifted their harmonic frequency as the alien vessel's docking clamps engaged. A subtle vibration ran through the station's superstructure, and Marcus felt an odd tingling sensation across his chest where the medallion rested against his skin. "Here they come," Vale whispered. The airlock cycled open with a sound like singing crystal, and the Zephyrian delegation emerged in perfect formation. Marcus found his breath catching as their leader stepped into the docking bay. Serafina Veltar, moved with the fluid precision of a dancer and the contained power of a predator. Her tall frame was encased in form-fitting armor that seemed to flow like liquid mercury. Adapting to her movements with seamless integration, her skin held the soft luminescence of pearl, marked with intricate bioluminescent patterns that traced elegant spirals along her throat and temples. Cascading hair, the color of starlight, fell in precise braids adorned with rank insignia that caught the station's artificial lighting like captured nebulae. But it was her eyes that held Marcus's transfixed deep violet pools that seemed to contain the wisdom of ancient stars. Those eyes swept the assembled humans with professional assessment until they found his face. The moment their gazes met, everything changed. Seraphine's confident stride faltered. Her breath caught audibly in the sudden silence that seemed to envelop the vast docking bay. For a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, the most respected diplomat in the Zephyrian fleet stood frozen, her luminescent patterns flickering rapidly as her gaze locked onto the medallion over Marcus's heart. The medallion began to glow. Marcus felt heat spreading across his chest as the ancient symbol pulsed with soft blue light, responding to Seraphine's presence in a way that defied explanation. The tingling sensation intensified, spreading through his body like liquid fire. Then, slowly and deliberately, Serafina took 3 steps backward and raised her hand in a salute that belonged to ceremonies older than human civilization. Her bioluminescent patterns flared brilliant white, casting ethereal shadows across the docking bay floor. Whispers erupted throughout the assembled crowd, both human and Zephyrian voices expressing confusion and awe in equal measure. Marcus caught fragments of conversation in the musical tones of the Zephyrian language, words that the universal translator couldn't quite parse, inflections that seemed to carry meanings beyond simple vocabulary. Several of Seraphine's subordinates exchanged glances heavy with what appeared to be reverence mixed with concern. One stepped forward as if to speak, but Serafina silenced him with a subtle gesture, never breaking her locked gaze with Marcus. "By the ancient stars," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that made human vocal cords ache in sympathy. Each word was carefully shaped by a throat designed for different atmospheric pressures, yet somehow perfectly comprehensible. "You bear the astral sigil." The medallion pulsed brighter, its silver and blue threads now glowing with the intensity of a small star. Marcus felt as though he were standing at the center of a cosmic convergence, energies he couldn't understand, flowing through him like tidal forces. "I am Serafina Veltar, of the Stellar Winds," she continued, her formal titles rolling off her tongue like poetry: Keeper of the Ancient Protocols, Guardian of the Sacred Archives. Her violet eyes never left his face, You, bearer of the sigil, are far more than you know. Lieutenant Commander Vale recovered her composure first, stepping forward with diplomatic precision. Captain Veltar, welcome to Nexus Station. I'm afraid we're not familiar with the significance of what you're referring to. Seraphine's attention shifted to Vale, though Marcus noticed her peripheral awareness remained locked on him with unsettling intensity. Forgive me, Commander. It has been many generations since we last encountered one who carries the mark of the Covenant Keepers. The sight has ... affected my usual protocols. She approached Marcus with renewed purpose, her movements now carrying a different quality, less warrior, more pilgrim. Your medallion, she said softly. Where did you acquire it? Father's, Marcus replied, acutely aware that every human and Zephyrian in the docking bay was hanging on his words. He died when I was young. My mother said it was a family heirloom, something to keep me safe among the stars. The slight smile that crossed Seraphine's features held depths that human expressions couldn't match. Safe among the stars, she repeated the words, carrying an undertone that suggested she found his ignorance either charming or deeply tragic. Yes, I imagine that is what your family would have told you. The medallion pulsed once more, its light reflecting in her violet eyes like captured starfire. And Marcus realized that his simple escort mission had just become something far more complex and dangerous than anything he'd ever imagined. The conference chamber aboard Nexus Station felt cramped, despite its generous dimensions, the weight of cosmic revelation pressing against the walls like a living thing. Marcus sat across from Seraphina, at the polished obsidian table, the medallion still glowing softly beneath his jacket, casting blue shadows that danced across both their faces. Admiral Victoria Cross entered with her characteristic stern bearing, her silver hair pulled back in a regulation bun that spoke of decades commanding respect in the outer sectors. Behind her floated Oracle, the station's AI constructus shimmering, holographic presence that somehow managed to convey both vast intelligence and curious personality. Captain Thorne, Admiral Cross, began without preamble. It seems your family has been keeping secrets that extend beyond personal history. She activated a holographic display showing star charts marked with strange symbols. These are classified dimensional monitoring stations, positions known only to the highest levels of Terran command. Marcus studied the display, a chill running down his spine as he recognized several locations. I've been to 3 of these coordinates during my deep space patrols. They were listed as routine survey missions. Routine for you, perhaps, Seraphina interjected, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to indicate deep concentration, but not routine for most humans. The astral sigil you carry is more than a family heirloom, it's a genetic key, proof of bloodline descent from the original Covenant Keepers. Oracle's holographic form brightened, data streams cascading around its ethereal presence. Confirmed. Cross-referencing genetic markers from Captain Thorne's medical records with archived Covenant databases. Match probability, 97.3%. His paternal lineage traces back to the Stellarian refugees who integrated with early human populations approximately 8 centuries ago. Stellarian? Marcus's voice cracked slightly. You're telling me I'm part alien? Seraphine's expression softened, her violet eyes showing something that might have been sympathy mixed with admiration. Not alien, Marcus. Guardian. The Stellarians were the first species to discover the dimensional barriers that separate our reality from ... other places. Places where things exist that should never be allowed to cross into our universe. Admiral. Cross manipulated the holographic display, showing time-lapse imagery of space-time distortions. 3 months ago, we detected unusual readings at 17 different monitoring stations. Reality tiers, expanding at an exponential rate. We've been losing contact with observation posts, entire systems going dark. The barriers are failing, Seraphina said quietly, without active Covenant Keepers to maintain the dimensional locks. The seals our ancestors placed are breaking down. And when they fail completely, she gestured, and her bioluminescent patterns projected images into the air-twisted landscapes where geometry followed impossible rules. Creatures of living shadow that seemed to devour light itself. The Void Realm Oracle identified with what sounded like genuine concern. Probability of successful dimensional incursion if barriers fail completely, 99.97%. Estimated survival time for current reality, 14 solar days. Marcus felt the medallion pulse against his chest, responding to his surge of adrenaline. And you think I can do something about this? I'm just a pilot. There's so much more than that. Serafina rose from her chair and moved to stand beside him, close enough that he could smell her exotic scent like ozone and starflowers. Your father didn't die in a simple transport accident, Marcus. He was killed defending one of the dimensional locks from a void incursion. He died a hero's death, holding the barrier long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. His father, whom he'd imagined as a simple merchant pilot, had been a cosmic guardian, fighting interdimensional monsters. Why didn't anyone tell me? Admiral Cross's expression grew grim. Because the Covenant went into hiding after the last great incursion 400 years ago. Too many Guardians died, and the surviving bloodlines scattered to avoid extinction. Your father was one of the last active members. But not the only one, Serafina added, her hand moving to rest gently on his shoulder. The contact sent electric tingles through his entire body, and he noticed her patterns flare brighter where her skin touched his jacket. The Zephyrian Archive holds records of 17 confirmed bloodlines still carrying active genetic markers. However, none have shown the strength of manifestation that you display. Oracle's data streams swirled faster, analysis suggests, Captain. Thorn represents a confluence of multiple Covenant bloodlines. His genetic profile indicates hybrid vigor of unprecedented potency. Marcus looked down at the medallion, which had begun projecting a soft holographic map showing the locations of dimensional tiers. These readings, I can feel them somehow. It's like discordant notes in a symphony. The sight, Serafina whispered, her voice filled with wonder. You're already beginning to awaken. With proper training, you could not only sense the dimensional barriers, but actively reinforce them. Admiral Cross leaned forward intently. How long would such training take, under normal circumstances? Years, Serafina replied, but we don't have years. However, there is another way of the joining ceremony. It would allow me to share my own training and abilities with Marcus, creating a bonded pair of guardians. Marcus felt heat rising in his cheeks as he caught the implications in her tone. What exactly does this ceremony involve? Seraphine's patterns shifted to what he was learning indicated embarrassment mixed with anticipation. It's intimate, a complete sharing of life force, memory, and consciousness. Partners who undergo the joining become connected on every level, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and physical, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Her violet eyes met his directly, especially physical. The bond requires absolute trust and compatibility. Oracle interrupted with what sounded distinctly like amusement. Metric readings suggest high compatibility between subjects. Recommend. Proceeding with ceremony at earliest opportunity, Admiral Cross stood abruptly. Then we're traveling to the Zephyrian homeworld immediately. Captain Thorn, consider yourself reassigned to Special Operations Division. Your new mission is to save reality itself. As the meeting dispersed, Serafina remained close to Marcus, her presence both comforting and electrifying. Are you prepared for this journey? She asked softly. Once we begin the awakening process, there will be no returning to your old life. Marcus looked into her alien eyes and saw depths of wisdom, strength, and something else that made his heart race. Medallion pulsed warmly against his chest, as if responding to his decision. I'm ready, he said, and meant it completely. Seraphine's bioship Celestial Harmony defied every principle of human engineering that Marcus had ever learned. The vessel's interior breathed around them, the walls expanding and contracting with subtle rhythms that suggested the ship itself was somehow alive. Corridors curved in impossible spirals that seemed to fold space, allowing them to traverse vast distances in mere steps. She's beautiful, Marcus murmured, running his hand along a wall that felt warm and slightly yielding beneath his touch. The surface responded to his presence. Luminescent patterns flowing outward from his fingers like ripples on a luminous pond. "The ship likes you," Seraphina observed, with genuine surprise. Her own patterns flickering with what he'd learned indicated pleasure. Normally, Harmony takes cycles to accept new crew members. She's never responded to a human before. They were 3 days out from Nexus Station, traveling through hyperspace corridors that existed in the spaces between dimensions. Marcus had spent the journey learning to access the dormant abilities his bloodline carried, guided by Seraphine's patient instruction and growing closer to her with each passing hour. Captain Raven Blackwood's voice crackled through the communication system from his escort ship Phoenix Rising. "Marcus, you seeing these sensor readings? We've got gravitational anomalies dead ahead. Looks like the hyperspace lanes are destabilizing." Marcus moved to the navigation alcove, where holographic star charts rotated slowly in three-dimensional glory. The medallion against his chest grew warm as he studied the display, and suddenly he could see patterns invisible to normal sensors dark. Streams of corrupted space-time flowing like poison through the cosmic arteries. "I can see them," he breathed, his enhanced perception showing him tears in reality itself. "The dimensional barriers are breaking down faster than we thought." Seraphina joined him at the navigation console, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. The contact sent familiar electric thrills through his body, and he noticed her breathing deepen whenever they were in physical proximity. "Show me what you see," she said softly, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. Marcus placed his hand over hers on the control interface, and the moment their skin touched, his enhanced perception flooded through. Their connection, Seraphina gasped as she experienced his sight, her patterns flaring brilliant white as their consciousnesses briefly merged. "Incredible," she whispered, her violet eyes wide with wonder. "Your perception is already stronger than Guardians who've trained for decades." The sharing of senses left them both breathing heavily, and Marcus became acutely aware of the magnetic pull between them. Seraphine's alien beauty seemed to glow from within, her luminescent patterns creating mesmerizing displays across her skin that spoke of emotions too complex for human language. "There's something else," she said, her voice slightly unsteady. "The joining ceremony, it works best when the participants have already formed emotional bonds. The stronger the connection, the more complete the sharing of abilities." Marcus turned to face her fully, seeing vulnerability in her expression that hadn't been there before. "What kind of connection do we have?" Instead of answering with words, she stepped closer, her hand rising to trace the outline of the medallion through his jacket. The touch sent waves of sensation through his entire body, and he saw her patterns shift to deep purple, what his growing understanding recognized as desire mixed with profound affection. "Among my people," she said softly. "When bioluminescent patterns synchronize between individuals, it indicates compatibility on every level. Watch." She placed her palm flat against his chest, over the medallion. Immediately, her patterns began, pulsing in slow, rhythmic waves. To Marcus's amazement, the medallion responded, its blue light matching her rhythm perfectly. The synchronized pulsing created a hypnotic display that seemed to draw them closer together. "It's never done that before," he whispered, covering her hand with his own. "Because you've never been near someone who could awaken your full potential," she replied, her face now inches from his. "Marcus, what I feel for you, it's more than just the mission. These 3 days, learning about your courage, your humor, the way you see beauty in everything around you." He silenced her with a gentle kiss, surprised by his own boldness, but unable to resist the magnetic pull any longer. Her lips were softer than expected, carrying the faint taste of starlight and exotic spices. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. Their patterns were cycling through rapid cascades of color that painted the entire alcove in shifting rainbows. "The ceremony," she said breathlessly. "We could begin the preliminary stages. Now, not the full joining that requires sacred grounds, but we could start building the neural pathways." "What would that involve?" Marcus asked, though his racing pulse suggested he already suspected the answer. Her smile held promises that made his knees weak. "Meditation, synchronized breathing, and physical harmony, the sharing of life force. Requires absolute intimacy and trust." Before he could respond, alarms began chiming throughout the ship. Raven's voice burst through the communication system with urgent intensity. "Marcus, we've got company. 3 void entities just materialized. Off our starboard. They're unlike anything in the database's pure shadow wrapped around impossible geometries, through the ship's transparent sections." Marcus could see the creatures Raven described beings that hurt to look at directly, their forms constantly shifting between dimensions. They moved through space without propulsion, defying physics as they approached the 2 ships. "They're drawn to your awakening abilities," Serafina explained, her expression shifting to warrior mode even as her patterns continued displaying her emotional state. "The stronger you become, the more they'll be attracted to your energy signature." Marcus felt the medallion pulse urgently against his chest. And suddenly, he could sense the creature's intent to hunger for the life force that flowed through dimensional guardians. "They want to feed on us, and we give them something too." "Choke on," Serafina declared, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to battle configuration. "Harmony. Evasive maneuvers. Captain Blackwood, maintain formation and prepare for combat." As the ship lurched into motion, Marcus found himself pressed against Serafina, her warrior's grace evident even in the chaos of space battle. The contact between them sent another surge of connection through their partially formed bond, and he realized that their growing intimacy was becoming as much a weapon against the darkness as any technology. "When we reach the homeworld," he said over the sound of the ship's defensive systems engaging, "I want to complete the ceremony. All of it." Her violet eyes met his with an intensity that rivaled the energy weapons firing around them. "We'd better survive this fight first." The medallion blazed with brilliant light as Marcus embraced both his destiny and the alien woman who had awakened it. While outside their bioship, ancient enemies circled like sharks drawn to blood in cosmic waters. The Zephyrian homeworld of Astralath hung before them like a living jewel, its crystalline continents pulsing with soft bioluminescence that could be seen from orbit. Sacred spires reached toward the stars from every landmass, their surfaces covered in the same intricate patterns that decorated Seraphine Skinna, planet-wide manifestation of the cosmic forces that flowed through her people. Marcus stood in the observation deck of the celestial harmony, watching their descent through atmosphere that shimmered with aurora-like displays. The medallion against his chest had been growing warmer with each kilometer they traveled toward the surface, responding to energies that saturated this world. "The Archive Sanctum," Serafina said softly, pointing to a massive crystal formation that rose from the planet's northern continent like a mountain of captured starlight, "where the first covenant was forged and where we'll complete your awakening." Elder Thessarian awaited them at the sanctum's entrance, even by Zephyrian standards. His bioluminescent patterns had long since settled into permanent configurations that spoke of wisdom accumulated over centuries. His violet eyes, so similar to Seraphine's yet deeper with age, studied Marcus with an intensity that made him feel transparent. "So," the elder said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones, "this is the hybrid bloodline that carries hope for both our species." He gestured with one elongated finger toward the medallion, which was now glowing, bright enough to be visible through Marcus's jacket. "The astral sigil recognizes sacred ground. Your ancestors walked these halls long ago." The interior of the sanctum defied description, vast chambers carved from living crystal that seemed to grow and reshape itself according to need. Streams of pure energy flowed through conduits in the walls, carrying information and power too. Archives that contained the collected wisdom of multiple civilizations. "The awakening ceremony requires 3 components," Thessarian explained as he led them deeper into the sanctum. "First, the candidate must prove worthiness by accessing their latent abilities. Second, a bonded partner must share their own power to complete the neural pathways. Third, both must survive the joining of their life forces." They arrived at the Chamber of Resonance, circular room whose walls were covered in the same spiral patterns as Marcus's medallion, but on a massive scale. At the center stood 2 crystalline platforms surrounded by floating energy matrices that hummed with barely contained power. "Begin with meditation," Thessarian instructed. "Allow your consciousness to expand beyond the boundaries of normal perception. Marcus settled onto one of the platforms, immediately feeling the crystal respond to his presence. Energy flowed up through the structure and into his body, awakening sensations he'd never experienced. His vision began to shift, showing him layers of reality that existed beyond normal sight. He could see the dimensional barriers, no gossamer, threads of force that held the universe together, like a vast web. And in that web, he could see the dark places where something had been cutting through the strands, creating wounds that bled chaos into ordered space. "Excellent," Serafina whispered from the platform beside him. "Now, reach out with your enhanced perception. Feel the connection between all living things." As his awareness expanded, Marcus became conscious of every life form on the planet, from the microscopic organisms in the crystal matrices to the vast intelligence of the planet itself. But more than that, he could feel Seraphine's presence like a warm star in the cosmic darkness, her life force calling to his with increasing intensity. "The second phase," the Sarian announced. "Partner bonding." Serafina rose from her platform and approached Marcus, her bioluminescent patterns now cycling through configurations he'd never seen before. Deep purples and blues interwoven with silver threads that seemed to mirror the design of his medallion. "This will be intense," she warned, settling beside him on the crystal platform. "We're going to share everything: memories, emotions, abilities, and physical sensations. There will be no barriers between us." She placed her hands on either side of his face, her skin warm and tingling with energy. The moment their consciousness touched, Marcus felt himself falling into her mind, experiencing her memories of growing up on this crystal world, her training as a warrior diplomat, her loneliness as one of the few remaining guardians. But she was experiencing his memories to his childhood on Earth, the loss of his father, his years as a pilot dreaming of adventure among the stars. And threaded through all of it, the growing love they'd discovered for each other during their journey. The sharing deepened, becoming physical as well as mental. Marcus could feel her heartbeat as if it were his own, could sense the energy flowing through her bioluminescent patterns. In return, she gasped as she experienced his human strength and adaptability, the hybrid vigor that made his bloodline unique. Now, the Sarian's voice seemed to come from very far away. "The final joining, merge your life forces completely." Seraphine's lips met his in a kiss that went far beyond mere physical contact. Their energy fields merged, creating the feedback loop that amplified both their abilities exponentially. Marcus felt power flowing through him unlike anything he'd ever imagined, the ability to see across dimensions, to manipulate the very fabric of space-time, to stand as a guardian between reality and chaos. But with the power came responsibility and danger. As their joined consciousness expanded, something noticed them from the dark spaces between dimensions. A presence vast and malevolent, older than galaxies, and hungry for the destruction of ordered reality. The chamber's crystal walls suddenly cracked as something began forcing its way through the dimensional barriers. Alarms echoed through the sanctum as reality itself began to warp around them. "The shadow entity," the Sarian shouted over the growing chaos. "The awakening has drawn its attention." Through the expanding rift, Marcus could see something that defied description: a being of pure negation that consumed light, matter, and energy with equal hunger. Tentacles of living darkness reached through the tier in space, grasping for the two joined guardians. "Together," Serafina said, her voice steady despite the cosmic horror bearing down on them. "We're stronger together than either could be." Alone, Marcus felt their bonds solidify into something unbreakable as they rose to face the entity. The medallion blazed with brilliant light, its pattern now replicated in bioluminescent display across Seraphine's entire body. They were no longer two separate beings, but a unified force. Human adaptability merged with Zephyrian wisdom, creating something the universe had never seen before. "You shall not pass," Marcus declared, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to shake the foundations of reality itself. The real battle was about to begin, but for the first time since learning of his heritage, Marcus felt ready to face whatever darkness awaited. He was no longer alone. He had found not just his destiny, but the love that would give him the strength to fulfill it. The shadow entity's roar of rage echoed across dimensions as it realized that the Covenant Keepers had returned, stronger than ever before. The Stellar Covenant Part 5. The New Covenant. The Combined. Humans' Euphorian fleet assembled in the neutral space between worlds was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human engineering precision merged with Zephyrian biotechnology created vessels that seemed to dance through space, their hybrid crews working in perfect synchronization thanks to the neural links Marcus and Serafina had helped establish. Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship Harmony Eternal, watching the final preparations for what would either be reality's salvation or its final battle. The medallion no longer simply rested against his chest. It had merged with his bioenergy matrix, pattern now visible as living light beneath his skin. Beside him, Seraphine's entire body pulsed with corresponding patterns. They're joined consciousness, allowing them to coordinate the fleet with unprecedented precision. Dimensional readings are off the scale, reported Commander Torres from the tactical station. The shadow entity has torn 17 major rifts across this sector. If it breaks through completely, it won't, Marcus said with quiet confidence. Through his enhanced perception, he could see the cosmic battle playing out across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The shadow entity was vast, larger than solar systems, but it was also desperate. The awakening of new Covenant Keepers had surprised it, disrupting plans that had been centuries in the making. Seraphine's hand found his, their intertwined fingers crackling with shared energy. The fleet is ready, beloved. Human courage and Zephyrian wisdom, united as they were always meant to be. The endearment sent warmth through their bond. In the 3 days since their joining ceremony, they had discovered that their love was more than emotion. It was a cosmic force that strengthened their guardian abilities beyond all previous records. Incoming transmission, announced Lieutenant Vale. It's Elder the Sarian from the Archive Sanctum. The ancient Zephyrian's holographic image materialized, his patterns flickering with urgency. Marcus, Serafina, the entity has found the location of the Prime Barrier, the original seal that holds back the Void Realm. If it destroys that anchor point, every dimensional barrier in the galaxy will collapse simultaneously. Through the viewport, space itself began to twist and distort as the shadow entity's influence grew stronger. Stars flickered and went out, consumed by expanding patches of absolute nothingness that hurt to perceive directly. Then we end this. Now, Marcus declared. He opened his consciousness to the entire fleet, his voice reaching every human and Zephyrian crew member simultaneously. All ships follow our lead. We're going into the heart of the distortion. The Harmony Eternal led the charge into the writhing mass of corrupted space-time, its hybrid shields blazing with protective energy. Behind them came hundreds of vessels, Juon crewed by beings who had chosen to risk everything for the preservation of reality itself. The shadow entity noticed their approach, turning its attention from the dimensional barriers to focus on the approaching threat. Tentacles of living darkness, each one the size of a moon, lashed out at the fleet, were caught and began dissolving into component atoms. Their crew's final thoughts adding to the psychic scream that echoed across the void. It's too big, Serafina whispered, her patterns flickering with concern as she witnessed the entity's true scale for the first time. How can we possibly fight something that vast? Marcus felt their bond pulse with shared determination. We don't fight it directly. We heal what it's broken. Instead of targeting the entity itself, he directed the fleet toward the dimensional rifts it had torn. Using their combined guardian abilities, he and Serafina began weaving new barrier threads, sealing the wounds in space-time that had allowed the shadow entity to manifest in their reality. The process required everything they had, just their individual power, but the love that connected them. The trust of their crews, and the combined will of two species working in perfect harmony. Each sealed rift diminished the entity's ability to maintain its presence in normal space. It's working. Commander Torres shouted over the sound of reality reshaping itself around them. The dimensional readings are stabilizing.
But the shadow...
The entity wasn't finished. Kay, realizing its manifestation was being cut off, it made one final desperate attack, directly at Marcus and Seraphina. A tendril of pure negation punched through the flagship's shields and reached for the two guardians. Instead of dodging, they stepped forward together, their joined hands blazing with light that matched the birth of stars. The darkness touched their merged energy field and recoiled as if burned, unable to consume what had been freely given in love. "You represent entropy and ending," Seraphina declared, her voice harmonizing with Marcus's across multiple dimensions. "But we represent something stronger, the choice to create, to protect, to love, despite the darkness." Shadow entities. Scream of rage and frustration echoed across the galaxy as its form began dissolving, pulled back into the void between dimensions. The rifts it had torn sealed themselves with crystalline barriers that would hold for millennia to come. As the cosmic storm subsided, space around them filled with new arrivals, beings of pure energy who materialized from dimensions beyond normal perception. The Cosmic Council, guardians of reality's deepest mysteries, had come to witness the restoration of the Covenant. "Well done, young guardians," their leader spoke directly into Marcus and Seraphine's minds. "The shadow entity has been banished, and the dimensional barriers now stand stronger than ever." One of the council members approached, its form shifting between configurations of living light. "We officially recognize the restoration of the Covenant Keepers, with Marcus Thorn and Seraphina Veltar as the new Prime Guardians. Your bonding has created possibilities we had not foreseen." Marcus looked out at the combined fleet, humans and Zephyrians working side by side to repair the damage from their cosmic battle. "What happens now?" "Now you build," another council member replied. "A new alliance between your species, new guardians trained in the hybrid techniques you've developed, and new barriers to protect this galaxy from future incursions." Seraphine's patterns shifted to display contentment mixed with anticipation. "Together?" "Always together," Marcus replied, pulling her close as the medallion's light pulsed in harmony with her bioluminescent patterns. "In this life, and whatever comes after." 6 months later, they stood together on the observation deck of Nexus Station, now expanded into a joint human Cephrian facility that served as headquarters for the new Covenant Keepers. The station bustled with activity as the next generation of Guardians trained in techniques that merged the best of both species' abilities. "Any regrets?" Seraphina asked, her hand resting on the subtle curve of her abdomen where their first child grew, a hybrid being that would carry the potential to bridge not just a species, but multiple dimensions. Marcus looked out at the stars, no longer seeing them as distant points of light, but as part of a vast web of interconnected possibilities. Somewhere out there, new threats would eventually arise, but they would face them as they had the shadow entity together. With love as their greatest weapon and the combined strength of two species united in purpose. "No regrets," he said, kissing her gently as their patterns synchronized in the familiar dance of shared consciousness. "Only infinite possibilities." The medallion pulsed once more against his chest, not with warning this time, but with contentment. The Covenant was restored, reality was safe. And the greatest love story in galactic history was just beginning its first chapter. Outside their viewport, the stars sang with harmonies that only Guardians could hear, a cosmic symphony of hope that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come.